Okay, here we are, Bruce, live in cyberspace. How you feeling?
Pretty good.
I want to welcome everybody to the Tobacco Road podcast, our first one of the season. We're trying something new. I'll just preface our conversation here by saying that with the quarantine and with everything going on in the world, we miss our customers. And we didn't know how to connect with them. So when I did a guest podcast for Raven Connections, who I want to thank for helping us with this, it gave me an idea that people do interact with us online. And we thought that this would be an awesome way to kind of get people to know what's going on behind the scenes here at the dealership a little bit, pull back the curtain, and kind of get to know what all the staff members are doing here day to day, because we deal with everything from quarantines to bad weather to just crazy things. And we also have a pretty amazing life. So the motorcycle industry has opened a lot of doors for us. We've gotten to do a lot of fun things. And we definitely live this lifestyle to the fullest. And we wanted to kind of share that with everybody. And so I didn't know who else to choose as our first guest than Bruce Downs. Bruce has been our shop foreman here and has been at Tobacco Road / Ray Price Harley-Davidson for over 30 years. And I thought that we could kind of kick it off with some good history, talk a little bit about Ray Price and the dealership and the drag racing and the tie-in. And obviously we went through an ownership change recently when Mrs. Price retired. So that's kind of the plan tonight. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you learn something, and I hope you laugh a little bit. So before we get going, though, I do want to thank Geico local office. They are the sponsor of our podcast, and they helped us quite a bit. They're good partners of ours, and they offer some good motorcycle insurance as well. So give them a call. The number is streaming at the bottom of the screen for you. Thank you very much, Frank, and all the guys at the Geico local office. And thank you, Mari, for helping us produce this.
You're welcome.
So we
got
a little bit of help. So, oh wow, we got some people on, huh? Well, let's get started because this is going to be fun. I wanted to start with a story about Bruce, kind of that affects me, and there's a couple of them. It was hard for me to pick. But we were fortunate enough a number of years ago to make a trip to Milwaukee to the Harley-Davidson Museum together. And we went there because the drag bike number 1 is what we would call it, right? Or was that number 2? No. There was one earlier one, wasn't there?
Yeah, I'd probably say number 4.
Number 4, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the early drag bikes that Ray Price built was chosen to go to a drag racing display in Milwaukee at the Harley Museum, and that was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, it happened. Well, it was kind of happening while Ray was alive, and when he passed away, that next following year is when we went up to Milwaukee. And I mean, it was an amazing trip because we got a lot of behind the scenes footage and look at some of what happens in there. And I think that's probably my favorite, besides maybe Vegas. That's one of my favorite trips that we've got to go on together in the motorcycle industry. There's a photo of us in the restricted area, which is, no hair and a lot skinnier. And you have a beard.
Yeah.
So we got to go to this restricted area where they have basically almost every model of motorcycle that they've ever produced stuck back there in those things. And that's a picture right there in the deep archives, which this is where my story is going about you. So we got to go into the deep archives of Harley-Davidson's museum. You can see the boxes in the background, right, where they keep everything from old ads to they have everything in there. And one of the things that we walked by was X-ray. Remember the X-ray box?
Yeah.
There was an X-ray box of bones. And while we were back there, the curator, Matthew Creedler was his name, I think.
David Creedler.
Yeah. David Creedler was, we asked him what the X-rays were, and he said, well, that's Evel Knievel's X-rays when he crashed because we sponsored Evel Knievel. And I thought that was fascinating because the family had donated them to the museum so they could have them for different displays that they did over time. But my favorite story was when they pulled out a letter that they sent Evel Knievel as a sponsor. Remember that? And Evel Knievel, the letter outlined what he had to do to be sponsored by Harley, and he didn't like it. And the letter had in big letters, F-U, and it was sent back to Harley-Davidson. And that gave us an insight on what kind of person Evel really was, because he didn't take any crap. But as we were going through this interesting episode, the curator did ask us if we wanted to see something really cool. And I'll let you jump in on the story there.
Yeah, we had talked about the sponsorship from Harley-Davidson for Ray, and it was lost here. I'd asked Ray about it, and he couldn't find it. Well, Creedler went down the aisles of the archive thing there and pulls out a box and comes over, rifles through the stuff in the box and pulls out the actual sponsorship letter. For the first sponsorship was 1980. The second one was through 81, and stated it was from John Davidson, if I remember right, to probably the people the money come from for sponsorship. And it said, let's keep Price on for an additional year, even though he's been experiencing problems with his engine. So we got a kick out of that, even though we knew that blower bike, had its problems, but they had the letter that we were looking for.
I think we have a picture of it, right?
Yeah, we do.
It was amazing that, here we are. This is back in the AMF days. Here we are working for the owner of the Harley store. We get to go up to the museum, the Harley-Davidson Museum. There's only one in the world. And there he is in the deep archives with a sponsorship letter for drag racing. Coincidentally, that all stopped because they went straight to flat track racing sponsorships the year after that, I believe.
Yep, that's the story I got from Ray. Was Dick O'Brien was head of the race department for Harley-Davidson. And there was a story about them sitting on the bleachers watching a race one time and how to, kind of get Harley-Davidson in the spotlight of racing. And they came up with the blower bike idea. And it lasted through 81. And then all of a sudden it was over. And we heard that, or Ray stated that, Dick O'Brien went back to the XR 750s and the flat track racing. So drag racing kind of came to an end there. But the sponsorship he had was 2 years. First year was $20,000. Second year was $10,000. That was a good sponsorship.
That was a lot of money back then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite story when you were working for Ray in those early days when he first got the dealership here in Raleigh? There's a good photo, you guys. what's something you remember from those days when we had AMF bikes here and Ray was kind of getting started?
When I first started in '84, one of my early jobs was to go up front in the showroom and actually remove the big old like bread pans from underneath brand new shovel head model bikes on the floor that were leaking. And back then it wasn't so abnormal for bikes to leak a little bit, but we didn't want the customers to see those oil pans under there, so had to remove those and just keep those shovel heads healthy on the showroom.
I was in a meeting one time in Myrtle Beach at a Harley meeting. Ray was there, and him and some of the local dealers here, Don Tilley, Shelton, Jimmy Allen, some of the guys that were the old guard of Harley-Davidson, North Carolina, they were really hammering the executives because they were reminding them that they were there for them when it was AMF.
Yep.
And Ray told a story to one of the new young executives, and I'll never forget this. He said, listen, when y'all didn't have any place to send them, I took every one of them in a box and stacked them in my warehouse until I could sell them. Do you remember that at all? Like that having a lot of bikes at the time and having a hard time selling them, or?
Yeah, we had a lot of bikes. We would keep them in the box and stack them in the back of the warehouse, and just wait for them to sell. But eventually they would all sell, and then the boom come along in those '80s when the Evo first come out. It really took off then.
Those guys made some good money for
sure. Yeah. 85. We thought it was going to last 10 years, but it exceeded that by far. Where there was waiting lists and deposits and all kinds of stuff.
So fast forward to today, you're doing a podcast during a pandemic. I mean, did you ever imagine taking those bread pans out? This is what it would look like 30 years later.
Nope.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yep.
We'll revisit the electric bike discussion later.
All right.
Because that's got all kinds of mixed feelings, right? Let's talk about the motor back here. We pulled up this motor out, and there's a lot of relevance to it in terms of where we come from as a heritage, as a dealership. And if you're following an HRA at all right now, a lot of the top fuel bikes are using a new form of propulsion, right? Because they're using blower motors and stuff, and they're trying to and this was something that when was Ray working on this thing?
Probably late '70s, but was campaigning it, and sponsored by the factory in the '80s or 1980 and through '81 is what I understand.
How many other bikes were doing this kind of stuff?
There was some out there. A few, but most of the blower bikes I've seen, there was always trouble on the starting line or the big end. They never really made a full pull, but Ray had some good luck with that bike. Unfortunately, it got wrecked and kind of just dissolved. It didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And he kind of went back to the injected bike, which had always done good for him. And did a lot of match races and stuff like that on that bike. That was the one he kind of got pretty famous on, carrying the front wheel the whole length of the track or the pull. People didn't believe he could do it, and they would actually go to the big end of the track to watch and see that tire not even touch the track.
There's tons of pictures of that in our museum. Tons of pictures of it.
Yeah.
That bike we were referencing that was in the Harley Museum, it actually, we have a picture of it. We'll pull it up in a second. We have a picture of it while it's on display in Milwaukee. There it is. And that is, they period correctly displayed it with the wheel in the air. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, that was Ray's preference. We called that the wheelie block. And he always wanted that bike, when it was on display, to be carrying that front wheel. Even though it was sitting still, there wasn't a rider on it. He wanted that front wheel in the air like that.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Creedler. I sent a list with that bike when we shipped it to Milwaukee for this event. And I talked about centering the wheelie block, getting it in the right spot underneath the cam cover, just right, the way Ray wanted it. And I asked him, what the guys thought about that list, and thinking that they might have been annoyed by it or something. He said, no, that was the greatest thing that we could have had to make this thing turn out like you said Ray wanted it. So that was pretty cool. So, and when I went and I saw that thing, I squared up on the front and looked down at that wheelie block, and it was perfect. Left to right, in the right position, and we knew Ray would have been proud of that.
Well, we kind of had a moment together when we were in the museum, because we came around the corner, and if you can tell, that is Willie G. Davidson in that photo. And we just came around the corner. We were not going there for any reason except to see what was going on.
Right.
And there's Willie G. Davidson standing there looking at the bike, and him and Ray knew each other. I was at a dealer show when I first got in the motorcycle business in the Harley space. It was one of my early shows where I went, and I was sitting with Gene and Ray, and Willie G and his wife Nancy walked by, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's Willie G. I really wish I could have a picture with them." And Gene goes, "Willie!" And I thought, "What? Willie? Oh, Gene!" And he comes over, and it was like they were long lost friends. And I was like, "This is unbelievable." Yeah. I really was starstruck when that happened, and I have that picture in my office actually still to this day. When that happened at the dealer show. So, but yeah, we came around the corner. There was Willie G. And can you pull that picture up again, Mari? If you look, that's sunlight coming through those windows like that. That's not lighting. And we were like, it's like it's being spotlighted by the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. We thought it was Ray smiling at Willie looking at his bike.
Yeah, it was a pretty epic moment. And again, one of those situations where the motorcycle business took us to a cool place. We got to experience something really neat. And somehow Ray was still opening some doors for us.
Yeah.
Even though he had passed already to do that. And I feel like we did him proud.
Oh, yeah.
The bike got shipped up there perfect, and they displayed it perfect, and it got its due in the Harley-Davidson Museum. It is now actually upstairs in the dealership, back on display with the 2014 and 15, I think, were the 2 years we won the national championship.
Yeah.
And they're side by side, the new drag bike, which has 1,100 horsepower, and the original drag bike. So kind of neat. For those of you guys that are watching, you can ask questions in the feed. You can type in and ask some questions for Bruce if you have anything. Oh, I need more ink. Oh, what's up, Rich? How you doing, Dad? Hope all's well up north. There's Jimmy's on. What's going on, Jimmy? Hopefully you're getting back to tattooing soon. Oh, there's Nick. How you doing, Nick? With the sun shining through. Yeah, that's a cool picture. I hunted all day for that thing today because I wanted to have it for our podcast. So, one thing about the blower motor that kind of we've been talking about to start this thing off is there's some parts on this motor that Ray built himself because he was riding this bike, and people thought that some of the engineering was a little crazy because, these motors are almost like a bomb on these bikes, right? And tell me about this plate up front.
Well, you see a picture of Ray riding it, and the position of the blower was right between his legs. And
so this part is where his legs would be, right here?
Yeah, so the blowers are prone to explode and come apart. And we always thought that Ray was crazy because his family jewels were right there on top of the blower. But when I found all this stuff, we found this a scatter shield, and so the nickname is Nut Shield. So it works out pretty good for him. Didn't ever blow one up that I know of, but he had his protection.
So it was meant to scatter the metal parts around his parts.
Yeah, that metal plate was to help protect.
Oh, that's epic. When I went to some of the top fuel drag races towards the end of our team and his life, I mean, it's a pretty violent sport. When those bikes take off from the line, I've seen them blow up on those tracks, and people get hurt. I mean, people do get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be pretty serious. So if I say to you back then, toughest bike that you had to deal with, kind of your nightmare bike.
There were several, but the ones a couple of them we got Ray involved to help us, and we found out that was a lot of pain. I mean, he was smart. He knew the answers to the things we were encountering, but whatever we had done just was erased, and he would take you all the way back to square one, the very beginning, the battery, spark plugs, and we would be like, we've already checked that, but he would make you start back at the beginning. If he was helping, you had to do it his way, and one in particular was it would just cut off randomly, and we figured out that it only would cut off when you sat on the seat. So we got to looking closer, and there were some wires, pretty much a bird nest under the seat, but there we finally found a wire that was crushed on the negative terminal, and every time you put the seat on it and sit on it, it would cut off. So it took days to figure this out and actually find it, because the wire wasn't really broken or skinned. It was just when you put the seat pressure on it, it would mash it into the negative terminal and just short everything out and make it cut off. And it was just such a treat when we finally found it.
So we still have those kind of problems
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Especially when the bikes are getting complicated, right?
Oh yeah, all the Bluetooth, the navigation, all that stuff.
We both have a lot of friends in the industry, and there's a common theme there. When what used to take 20 minutes now takes an hour to diagnose and fix properly because of the technology that's in the new motorcycles.
Yep. The computers, the digital tech, all that stuff comes into play now.
So remember when we went to Rockingham and you all tore up the pits in the mini bikes?
Oh yeah. We were just having a big old time with all our mini bikes. There was probably 6 or 7 of us. And we had found this hill on the backside of the track, which happened to be the high rent district of the campers that would always stay over there. And we were just ripping on these hills. Nick flipped the 4-wheeler, and we were having a lot of fun. And that night, I don't know, it must have been 12 or 1 o'clock. We all decided to go back to this hill. And the story was that the high rent district guys got really upset and were mad and raising hell about it. And Ray had heard about it that next day and was fussing about, I don't know who them guys were over there raising all that hell. And Jeremy knew it was us, and he didn't tell on us. He took care of us. And the joke was Ray was mad, but didn't know it was his own people that were over there having a big old time. So we got away with that one. And Nick didn't get hurt too bad, so it worked out.
Some of those mini bikes, I think, are in the dealership.
Yeah, we've kept a few around here. It's kind of
Way Tobacco Road, picked up my Harley mid-afternoon this past Friday and did service. Calling in the morning, ready, and great turnaround service.
Oh yeah, we knew that was gonna. That was
Thank you very much.
Good shot at helping somebody get their bike back quick. It worked out good.
Well, what I think's been interesting is you've been here a long time. We've got some employees who've been here a long time. Jeff Capstan Parts, 30 plus years. Betsy's been here a long time. And you've seen kind of both sides. You've seen the small shop where everybody did everything, right? And we would, like, running and picking up a guy off the side of the road or whatever is a normal occurrence. Matter of fact, sometimes that's how you got business, right?
Yeah.
To being a mega, a garage mahal, I guess I've heard it called, right? A mega dealership. I mean, 50, 60,000 square feet, beautiful building, lots of bills, lots of pressure, right? And some of those dealerships won't do that kind of stuff. because they're not set up that way. They have everything so processed that they can't get that stuff done. And you've seen that side of it. I think definitely during quarantine, we got back to my phone number was on the door, and we were just doing whatever we could to help anybody we could to get them riding. And it kind of went back to how it used to be a little bit. And it's a lot more fulfilling at times, because you feel like you're really I mean, I know at the times I've been broken down on my bike, or something happened, or maybe I ran out of gas and I thought it was something else. Not that would happen to me. But I mean, I was relieved when somebody showed up to help me.
Right.
And especially with somebody who knew what they were doing. So it's kind of interesting that it's kind of done that and then gone back over time, and you've got to witness all of it.
Yeah, so we reached a point where we had heard a lot of other dealers were turning away or choosing not to work on shovel heads. And then that crept into the Evo world. And we were like, no way. I mean, we got shovel head people, myself, Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we take care of that stuff. And when they reached up to the Evos, we got a lot of Evo customers still. And we said, no way, we can't turn those people away. And so, I mean, we pretty well still take the old bikes and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's hard to do, and it can be time consuming, right? And so, it's
getting parts, things like that, but
and there's some institutional knowledge, right? I mean, some of that stuff it's going away. So, it's definitely an art, I think, those older bikes. Thanks, John. Appreciate the comments there. We do try to do some of the small things for sure. To try to make everything good. Got a shovel that needs to be built for. I know, David, you've been reaching out to me.
Well, it's like we just took in some shovel heads.
Let's get back to. I mean, there was a couple of years there. We had a rough run at Tobacco Road, and we went through some challenges. It kind of started with Ray passing away, and we lost some good employees there. And front facing to the customer, a lot of people don't kind of know what happens behind the scenes. And in a short period of time, we lost an employee to a car accident, Brad. We lost Noel to a surgery. And those two were both master techs, and we lost them back to back basically. And that was a pretty big blow to the shop. And it was kind of a sad time for us.
Yeah, it put us in a bad spot for a while. We think about them all the time. There's always a story or a joke they told. Noel kept everybody laughing all the time.
He sure did.
And Brad was that young gun mentality, with high performance and stuff. So we definitely missed that.
They were really big pieces to our build team.
Oh yeah.
And they, I mean, everybody back there helps work on those, some of the kind of extreme custom bikes and some of the accessory stuff that we do back there. That's a little more detailed, but Brad and Noel loved to do some wiring, didn't he?
Oh yeah. He was a stereo guy from the 80s, back when cars didn't have that nice a system. And he knew a lot of stuff about the sound waves and all the stuff, that tuning amps and stuff.
If he was alive today, he'd be in heaven with all the stereo stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine him at one of the Sound Off series contests that we do down there?
Yeah. Stereo was really building right about the time we lost him.
Yeah. And then Brad had a good eye for some of the cool stuff that was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, I would go to him wanting that young man's view or attitude about things, and he'd lay it on me. I learned a lot from him.
We built Harley-Davidson ran a contest a number of years ago called Custom Kings. And the contest was, we had to take a stock Street 500, right? And we had to make it cool. But we could only use we had to use as many OEM original factory parts as we could, and modify those. Like there was a certain percent that we could use that was not made by Harley, right? But we could take Harley parts and make them into whatever we wanted to. So like one example is our street rod, our street, we called it the Street Bully, right?
Yep.
Our Street Bully bike build had a V-Rod taillight in it, and we could use a stock V-Rod taillight. We could modify the body work, and we could make that thing fit. And I remember how much fun that was because those guys kind of collaborated together on it, and that build kind of took its shape as we were progressing in it.
Yeah, we tried quite a few things in the beginning. I'll never forget Bacon kept saying, like a weekend, it was like, all right, guys, we still don't have a concept.
He did.
Second week, all right, guys, we still don't have a concept. And about the third week, it was starting to come together. We had tried so many different things, and the bodywork was coming together.
Yeah. The wheels. The
yeah,
wheels took us
the
2
Buell,
weeks.
yeah, the Buell stuff that we were wanting to incorporate on it started coming together. And finally, he stopped saying we didn't have a concept. We had it. We knew we had it.
We did.
And then Kyle come through with the paint, the color. Of
Kyle Morley from Execution Style Paint in Elmhurst, New Jersey. Shout out to Kyle. That was his dad on earlier, Pops.
Yeah.
He did come through on the paint for us.
Yeah.
Because we were struggling with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And those bright neon yellow wheels.
Yeah, but that bright neon color was going on. I saw it in the horse racing. The guy had on like those bright yellow shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw it in like track and field. That color was popular at that time. And Kyle nailed it with those wheels because you could see that bike 2 miles away.
Well, ultimately, that bike took third place in the country from all the Harley dealers that participated.
Yeah.
And we got to go to Las Vegas. And I remember Ray was so proud. He took everybody that was involved.
Yeah.
Like we had a crowd that year.
Yeah. Yeah. We enjoyed that. We felt like he had some deep pockets to take all the build team. And like he said, we took third, but all the Harley execs and people and motor company people were just flocking around our bike, and we were pretty proud of that. And we still think to this day that we had a little influence in some new Harley styling that took off after that, like the street rod,
yeah,
and even the Bronx thing coming out, has got that. I mean, we did that style bike before they did.
Well, ask Bruce about TS Sportster.
Oh, I know he's talking about. So, quick story. It was an early S&S stroker motor on a 93, I think, anniversary Sportster. The guy kept it super clean. He wanted more power. We fixed him up. The rocker boxes were so tight under the frame, I had to trim the rocker boxes to get them to fit in, typical of a stroker, tile style motor. But I had test rode it, and I was coming up the hill here by the shop. Didn't know TS had showed up, and there was a group of guys by the back door. And so I don't abuse customers' bikes, but this particular time all you had to do was twist the throttle on this bike, and it would wheelie. And I just did it right there coming up the hill and had the front wheel way up. And as I kind of got around the corner of the building, I saw TS's face. And all the guys just jaws dropped because all they saw was the belly of this motorcycle because I had the whole frame, looking at them. And I apologized to TS that, I wasn't abusing his bike, but he's like, no, man, that was great. I loved seeing it like that. But it was so easy to pull the front wheel up on that bike.
When we're doing a lot of these bikes, the Street Bully was one. We participated in a second Custom Kings contest with the Sportsters. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And one common denominator that I heard from everybody was we're not going to build anything that can't be ridden, and it can't be ridden correctly, and it can't be ridden hard.
Right.
And we had some crazy ideas, some lofty expectations on that Sportster build. and we built a bike that we wanted to show people you could ride and ride hard. And we freaked everybody out with it, right? Because we got some pictures of it, right? So this was the bike in front of the dealership. Again, a Kyle Morley execution style paint job on that thing that was, it was expensive.
Oh yeah.
The paint job was very expensive, but it was very, very beautiful. But there's a couple, put that one up, right there. So that's my stunt double. That's our buddy Ryan Lanier out of Jacksonville, and he was actually the one riding the bike for us for the photos. And I mean, I was very, very nervous that Sunday. That was a Sunday, I think, right? I was very nervous because we had spent all that money on this bike to try to win this contest. We wanted some photos. The bike got into a magazine, and we wanted a photo that showed the rideability of the stuff that we built here.
And the skid plate.
And that's right. We built that skid plate right under there that says Ray Price and the Harley logo. So you didn't see that unless it was up in the air. But if you notice those bags, now those are original FXR bags that we bought on eBay that we paid way too much money for because you can't get them anymore, because we wanted that silver trim in that photo. We wanted that silver trim to be intact, but the rest of the bags looked like they had been dragged behind a horse. They were in rough shape. And we got the bags. We sent them to Kyle. Kyle said, "Where in the did you find these bags? They look like they've been drugged by a horse." And when they got back from Kyle, they were perfect because he really did a good job on them. But, you know, that kind of expertise costs money. And so we had quite a bit of money in that paint job. And there we are, just inches off. Matter of fact, we were dragging. There are little rubber pads on those bags touching the ground.
Yeah, they were moved. The bags were moved back a little bit farther because it was a Sportster with the FXR bags. But thank goodness Ryan put the little rubber strips on the bottom to save them from getting skinned up.
It was really for him to see how far back he could go. Yeah, because he can go further than that.
Yeah, but it would have tore
the bags all the heck. So
skin them up bad.
But I remember, because Ryan's a really good motorcycle rider. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff with him. He is one of our stunt guys during Bike Fest. And I've been knowing Ryan for many, many years. I ought to have him on this podcast sometime. That'd be some good stories.
Yeah.
But when he rode that bike the first time, I mean, he immediately was able to wheelie it. And I remember he commented on the fact that the bikes because he's wheelied a couple of our custom bikes, because we did the Captain, or the Evel Knievel bike.
Oh yeah,
the replica that Jody Perowitz painted for us.
Yeah.
So he's wheelied a couple of bikes for us and for photo ops and stuff.
Yeah, we did the math on the sprockets, so I mean it wasn't stopped.
Yeah. So kind of another interesting story. And so I posted that picture right after we did it, and I really wanted to take credit for the wheelie, but I couldn't. And Ryan was going to let me too, but I fessed up. He's my stunt double. But we had a good time with that too. And unfortunately, that particular contest, all the voting was on the internet.
Yeah.
And so the voting was not quite the same. But I will tell you, the guys that won that contest were the same guys that beat us in the first one, because I'm friends with them now.
Oh,
Yellowstone Harley-Davidson. Yeah. And they build some great stuff. So shout out to those guys in Montana, where there's not very much COVID-19.
Yeah. Little turbo bike beat the Street Bully, but it was worthy. It looked cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the Ray Price era before we get into some more modern times. As Harley starts evolving and the business starts growing and the demands start changing, you start to kind of build your own, a pretty big team back there of mechanics to try to establish some kind of a routine. And now you've got old bikes, new bikes. You've got customers who are used to doing their own work and they can't anymore. You've got all these different scenarios that get thrown at you from a customer service perspective. Talk to me a little bit about how maybe you dealt with some of that stuff, like um, so you have customers now who have been servicing here as long as you've been here, and you know they've kind of watched this stuff progress as well. And you know, one complaint that I hear back there is as this stuff gets more complicated and they can't work on their own bikes anymore, and things are taking longer to fix, and things are more expensive to fix. Talk to me a little bit about how the evolution of the technician has kind of helped with that. And you know, I feel like back in the day, the techs spent a lot of time talking to customers because you would meet them. It was a smaller group, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, it got to be more of a production line based system, right?
Yeah.
And you started basically turning out work a lot quicker, and there was no time for that relationship building on the technician side. It happened at the front counter, and I feel like there's a little bit of a resurgence where the customers and the techs who end up establishing somewhat of a relationship, it turns into a really good situation where, I mean, we did an engine job just the other day where the customer said, I talked to Bacon on the phone,
Yeah.
and I trust him, and that's why you're here. That's why I'm here with my engine. So, you know, to talk a little bit about that evolution, or maybe there's a couple stories that you have where that was a good thing.
Yeah, the one-on-one with the customers is definitely a good thing. I mean, an old story I have when I started early on, I did a lot of sweeping, built some cabinet doors, and they groomed me into changing tires and changing oil. But I'll never forget, I was over by the tire machine, and I remember a customer come in and he yelled out, and I don't want the new guy working on my bike. And it crushed me because I was like, man, I'm trying to get into this. I want to do good. I want these people to like me and trust me. But he laid it out, and I did not work on his bike that day. But I have worked on it a lot since then. He got to know me, and he's a long-time customer. And that worked out. But yeah, the one-on-one helps a lot. We used to try to put a tech with a customer and follow that bike the whole way through if possible. It's hard sometimes, but if that relationship with the tech and the customer, he's got a friend and he can come in and he can tell what's going on and be more one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that works out nice.
You know, I have people ask me sometimes, why is it so dramatically different in terms of pricing when you're shopping work at Harley stores? Aren't they all the same? Because Harley stores kind of like, from a customer perspective, you don't realize that they're independently owned and operated. And a lot of people look at the Bar and Shield and they feel like Bar and Shield, it's like Chevy, right?
Yeah.
If I go to any Chevy store, isn't it all the same? Well, Chevy stores are independently owned and operated as well. A lot of them are owned by the same owner, but there's still someone in the store kind of deciding what to happen to make that store work. And so Harley stores are that way. And so, you know, especially now, because I feel like pricing for service work seems like it's all over the board, right? Because we have people walking with some crazy quotes sometimes, and really who's touching your bike and what they're doing to it and what they're suggesting, it sort of matters, right?
Yeah.
Because it's there's on some of the things, there's several different ways to skin the cat. I mean, we have a dyno, right? And maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure you have some cool dyno stories. You've got to have one where something blew up.
Oh yeah, it is a good one. So it was probably early '90s. We called it the S&S bike. It was a '92 FXR, and we had tried. S&S had come out with their Super E and G carbs and some other stuff we had tested on this bike. Well, Ray's head guy that did the drag bike heads special for him and some other racers too. He was kind of discreet and everybody didn't know who he was. But anyway, he was at the shop that day and we were testing in our old Dynajet 100 early on. One of the first people around here, I think, that had a dyno. And we were testing away, and we were getting up in the 90s, which was pretty good for an Evo in those days. There was the 100 horsepower wasn't really obtainable just yet.
Right.
And we had gotten up to about 92 horse with this guy's billet heads. And all of a sudden, the bike just broke, hot oil sprayed all inside the dyno room, got all on us, scared the crap out of us. And we realized that it had busted the inner primary, which comes from a lot of power and things flexing. And I had to go tell Ray, that testing was over. The bike was broke. And he and Don were at the lathe, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, I got some bad news, guys. Well, the test bike just broke." And they looked at each other and they started laughing. And then I was like, "Well, what's going on here? I thought this was going to be a lot worse." And come to find out, Don had that engine configuration with those heads at an engine crank dyno and had broke that dyno. So they thought it was funny. If you're making that much power and you're breaking the equipment, you're doing pretty good. So
right.
it turned out all right. Ray said, get a new primary, next day air, fix it, get back to testing. And we did, and finished the job for him. And then we sold quite a few of those billet heads after that, but it was fun time.
People knew they were going to work.
Oh yeah. They made good power, little combustion chamber, just beautiful, beautiful work.
That experience level is priceless, because how many times have you drawn on some of those experiences to solve current problems?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So over the time, so Ray really developed into somewhat of a celebrity in the drag racing world.
Yeah.
And ultimately locally here with some of the philanthropic work that he did and stuff like that, he was definitely well known and well liked in the community. You had to have met some cool people over the years that came in to interact with him, that would come in here, that were motorcycle kind of people. I imagine you had to have met Petty at one point on the ride.
Richard Petty came. A lot of racers. Marion Owens, Clyde Rollins. Had some music artists come by when Walnut Creek was big. We had Neil Young. We got tickets free to the show backstage. KC and the Sunshine Band. That was kind of an odd one. Alan Jackson, he's a big motorcycle fan. He tried to buy a bike that one of the guys, Eric Peterson, the old Panhead guy, had built for a customer. Pro One frame, nice Evo motor, 2-in-1 pipe, beautiful bike. And Alan saw it in a magazine and called us and asked to buy it for $50,000. And that was enormous back then for a custom bike. And we contacted, it wasn't quite done yet. And we contacted the guy that we were building it for and said, yeah, Alan Jackson just offered you $50,000 for your bike. He said, no way, man. He said, that's my dream bike. I've been wanting to build this thing for all my life. It's not for sale.
You didn't sell it?
No.
Wow.
Alan Jackson left with his tail between his legs.
I can appreciate that, though, because we're working on one right now that I'm probably not going to sell.
You better not.
So I can totally get that.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it a lot. Talk to me about some of the fulfilling moments you've had over the years. As a motorcycle guy, as a guy who lives his life around motorcycles, you've had to have some times that you just thought, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say when we went to the Concours d'Elegance show, it was, our category was vintage top fuel with Ray. The barn job was there. Couple of double engine Triumphs. Pete Hill was there. Very select group, probably only 10 or 12 bikes in its little section on this beautiful golf course. I don't know if you're familiar with the Elegance shows, but they're big time.
They're pretty amazing.
Yeah, you got the old Mercedeses and the Bugattis and all these vintage cars. And we thought we were going to win that show. We really did. And Double Trouble Triumph actually won, but we were already thinking, because if you win this show, they wanted you to drive the vehicle across the stage. And we were like, oh man, now we did crank that bike, but the clutch and all wasn't where you could apply power and actually, drive it.
Right.
So we were thinking we were going to hook a pullback bike or something to it and tow it across the stage, or get a clutch in it and try to drive it. But we didn't win, so we didn't have to do that. So we were kind of disappointed with that. But it was a big hit. Ray really loved the notoriety and the high level of people at this show.
Yeah.
Outside of Detroit, it was a good time.
Well, I felt like Ray always was trying to promote the sport of drag racing, one, as a sport, and two, to get people interested in something new that they haven't seen or maybe experienced before. And if you ever go to a drag race, especially if it's your first time, car or bike, I mean, it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, your heart skips a beat,
Yeah.
and the amount of power that these vehicles put out, it's tremendous. And the riders, especially, I mean, it's, Ray rode a long time.
Yep.
He put his body through a lot of G's over the years.
Yep.
And he loved it. And I felt like that show was a way for him to get an audience into drag racing that maybe wouldn't look at it, because it was so specialized.
Yeah.
That was pretty neat. I remember when you went. I did not get to go with you to that, but I remember when you went, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anything else that you can think of that was kind of a rewarding moment? Maybe for customer build or customer experience?
Quite a few customer builds. It's tough to think of just one in particular right now.
I remember when Brad passed, I think his parents brought us his bike.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was broke. Brad had he had done a lot of work to that bike, and it was over 11-to-1 compression, big 650 lift cams, really throwing down a lot of horsepower. He had done a lot of dyno work on it, and still had the stock carburetor on it. So we kind of questioned whether it started for fuel or not this particular day. He was riding it to work, and it torched the pistons. So it was broke when they got it and brought it to us, and we just, we made the decision that we wanted to help them and fix it. And we were thinking about putting it back to stock, and we knew we kind of thought it through, and we were like, there's no way Brad would have wanted that,
Right.
putting it back to stock. So we did change the pistons. We stepped down on the cams, and still pretty hot bike. But it was cool leaving a lot of the high performance parts in it that Brad had put in. It had a Screaming Eagle lockup clutch on it, and it's running. They've since picked it up, and his dad's riding it now. He actually took the riding academy class and tried to do all the things right, and he's really
awesome.
Really enjoying that bike, because it was just a really cool dyno. Well, I think it was a 2000.
He has a lowrider, I think.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah,
lowrider
it was
brand version. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And they've been kind of hanging with us and following us and stuff.
Oh yeah,
for years
they,
now.
They treat us good.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening now in the motorcycle industry. It's kind of a crazy time for us because we have electric coming out, right?
Yep.
And we'll circulate back to that at the end of the podcast. But and we've got Harley branching into some other genres of motorcycling. We've got a dual sport coming out.
Yep.
We've got a naked sport bike coming out. Harley's really trying to figure out how they can, grow their customer base a little bit from what they've been doing over the last, 20 years or so, I guess. Talk to me a little bit how you feel about that. What is going through your mind when, we're coming back there and Bacon's having to do training on a big long pole to pull somebody off an electric bike if they're getting electrocuted because the battery wasn't disconnected, and we got training to go mudding with a dual sport bike, for customers that is badged Harley-Davidson.
Yeah.
It has to be weird.
Yeah, it's changed a lot since, to me, the early days of novice rider would maybe start out on a Sportster or maybe a Super Glide. And then your older guys kind of gravitated towards the dressers and the electric glides and stuff. And there was a nickname for them that people didn't like, and it was Grandpa Glides. Well, now the FLHX and the Road Glide, I mean, people, that's the new popular bike. The new custom, the new popular bike like Maury rides is not a Grandpa Glide. And that, so the guy was a grandpa. His son, everybody in the family loved Harley Davidson, and it would just evolve, and it stayed in the family. It worked like that in my family. My dad had Harleys and passed that on to me, helped me get my first one, and that seems to have gone away a little bit. The grandpas are kind of phasing out. If they don't get a trike or a convertible, they kind of phase out.
Yeah.
And then some of the younger kids these days don't really need a motorcycle. I grew up on mini bikes, and that was just the cycle, of events. You wanted to ride a motorcycle. But that's definitely changed. So, we're trying to figure out how to get these young people on Harleys and keep this tradition going,
Right. Well, a saying that I learned early is only a biker knows why a dog sticks his head out a car window. And I feel like there's some, it says tell story number 5. I feel like there's some truth to that, because that experience that you have with the temperature changes, the smell changes, like you don't get that anywhere else. And when you roll up to the stoplight, and just everything is you're experiencing everything at a hyper level. You can't get that anywhere else. And I think that people it's hard to explain it. Like, you have to get them on bikes to ride. And surely everyone's working hard to figure that out, because there is a problem with the funnel right now. More people are leaving the lifestyle than are coming in. And so it's disproportionate at the moment as an industry. And obviously, initially I thought, well, coronavirus isn't going to help, but there's sure a lot of bikes out there rolling around these days.
Oh yeah, that's kind of the release, to get out and ride in the sun and everything.
But to have an open mind at this point in your career to embrace all this new stuff that's coming out, it has to be sometimes maybe intimidating, and you probably have to work through some of that, because you sort of you love motorcycles. I mean, you're partial to Harleys, I know, but
oh yeah,
you love the custom scene, you love the mini bikes. You built your grandson this badass red wagon that has big drag wheels on the back and little bitty wheels on the front.
Yeah,
it's the baddest red wagon on the planet.
Yeah,
you could sell those if you built them and mass produced them. I know you could.
Yeah. That was his first Christmas present from me, and it happened to be the first wagon that his dad, my son, got when his first Christmas came along. So that wagon was already 30 years old, had some nice patina on it.
Yeah.
It was actually in a little junk pile behind my house. Dug it out and had the idea to put those racing slicks on the back.
Oh, here we go. I would like to say, as a young rider, I love the experience. I am sad I did not do it sooner. Yes, and that's actually Shelly, one of my friends who just got on a Slim recently, and she absolutely is having the time of her life.
Well, and testament to the lady riders out there too. That's really growing fast, and they're figuring out what we knew a long time ago.
They are.
It's just cool.
But it you do have stories, and that's my favorite part, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast. Is there's a lot of stuff that happens as we're experiencing what's going on, and when we ride. And I think it's important to share that stuff to try to entice other people to have those experiences. I mean, I have a story from yesterday. You know, I went on a group ride, and Shelly, who just commented, happened to go with us. And it's the first day that the boat ramps opened at Falls Lake. And there was a line of boat. They would only let so many boats on the lake. So people waited for hours to get their boat in the water, and the line was a half a mile long.
Wow.
And we were going to sit there and roast. If you rode yesterday, it was a little toasty. And we were going to roast. And I decided that we were going to take the shoulder. And I had Rich with me, who rides a dual sport Triumph. I knew he'd be all right. I had my buddy Garland with me. He was riding a Street Glide. We've been riding a long time together. No problem. I had TJ with me, local hot rod builder here in town. He was going to have no problem. And we had Shelly. And I thought to myself, okay, I'll just keep my one eye on the front and one eye in the mirror. And as long as I see her headlight doing just like normal, we're going to be good.
Yeah.
And she said she looked over at TJ, and he gave her this look, and she gave him this look, and we went down the shoulder, right? So it wasn't concrete. It was basically a bicycle single track.
Oh, okay.
And we passed all these cars, and of course they're mad, but I mean, we were going to wait there. We were not trying to get to the boat ramp.
Right.
And when we got to the end of that road, I had to stop, get off my bike, walk back to her, and give her a fist pump because she made it. That was her first story experience riding a motorcycle because she just finished the riding academy herself, and it was pretty fun. So now we have a story, right? And we're going to tell that story forever. And I have stories like that for the years that I've been riding that we bring up, every time we get together and hang out, and it's my favorite thing to do when I'm around other motorcyclists because is to make those memories.
Yeah.
Talk about the favorite place you've ever ridden to.
Kind of coincides with your story of a good ride. It was to the Neil Young show at Walnut Creek. He had called, or his roadies had called, wanting to see if we'd work on his bike. That it was a Saturday, and I fielded the call, and this was the old shop, and we were booked up, and I was like, "No, man, we're full. We can't get to it today." And he said, "Well, this is Neil Young's bike." I'm like, "Okay, well, why don't you just bring it on in?" And wound up getting two more of the roadies' bikes too, but Neil's bike was just beautiful, brown paint job, broken arrows painted on the saddlebag lids, just tricked out. Fat Boy, I believe. But anyway, we wound up getting 10 gold circle seat tickets for the show. And we went, and we were able to park backstage where Neil's trucks and his bike was. And we were wandering around back there, and the guy, one of the roadies approached us and said, what are y'all doing back here? He's like, "You need some backstage passes." We hadn't even got the gold circle seat tickets yet. And there was 10 of them, and there was 9 of us back there. Debbie was the only one that she didn't ride a bike that day. So she wound up sitting in the one of the 10 gold circle seats without us. We were all backstage. But great show. We watched, we were back there stepping on the cords, and I was 10 feet away from Neil Young watching the sweat fly off his head. And we had given him a T-shirt, a Ray Price T-shirt, and he put that on during the show, and that was cool. But leaving the show, you know how Walnut Creek's about 4 or 5 lanes wide, traffic, just thick. And we decided to split the lanes coming out of there.
Right.
And people were hanging out of their cars, cheering, going, "Yay, Harley-Davidson." And just, we were making noise and on the throttle and stuff. And it was, we all had my electric glide, a couple more bikes, and then Nick, the old crew chief, was riding the full dresser. Well, when we got out we realized that he was missing. He couldn't fit through some of the splitting lanes we were coming through. But anyway, the back roads home to my house, I remember there was this long swooping curve, and the bike kind of bottomed out in the bottom of the frame must have been scraping, and I think lit up a grease ball or something, because the guy behind me said, "Man, a big flaming ball of fire like shot over my head." And all I could think of was a grease ball come off the bottom of my bike. But I mean, that was just a great story, and just a great ride home, pumped up from the show. And we were worried about Nick, though, because we didn't see him till the next day, and we weren't so sure what happened to him because we didn't wait for him, unfortunately. But he said he wound up making a left when we took a right, and he wound up going home. He got home okay.
Yeah. Let's see. We got Bruce. Katie asked, if you could have any bike in the world, what would that bike be and why? I think I know the answer to this because you're probably riding it.
Yeah. So 1977 Shovelhead Electric Glide, stripped down. Well, actually, I got the fairing and the bags back on it.
Mm-hmm.
It resembles FLHX. I've had people ask me what year model Fat Boy it was, and that made me mad. And I've had what year model Road King is at. That's what the Fat Boy and the Road King came from,
right?
That bike.
You got something painted on the rear fender too.
Oh yeah. So it's a tribute to my uncle that was killed in Pearl Harbor on the USS West Virginia. That Sunday morning, he was below decks and the ship sank. So, they're pretty sure they perished, under the water. But Mark actually paid for the painter Wild Bill back then to paint. I had it painted on, and Mark paid for it. So that was kind of cool. But it's just a tribute from his birthday to, I show people, and the death date is December 7th or 12/7/41. A lot of people don't put that together. December 7th, 1941.
Right.
I ask them where did he pass away at, and it takes them a minute sometime to get it, but it comes through. But my mom was much younger sibling, one of 15 kids. So there was 4 males in World War II all at the same time. My grandma had that little banner with the 4 stars on it that represented how many sons you had in the war.
Wow.
He was the only one that didn't come back.
Yeah. Well, I see you riding that bike. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we do have a picture of it.
Yeah.
I see you riding to work now in that thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
It's awesome. So that's the answer to the question, favorite bike and why. So let's spend a little time on electric. I think that, we got our live wires right as COVID hit.
Yeah.
We got 3 of them. We got a charging station installed. And we start seeing electric cars show up and plugging in, and we start trying to figure out how all this stuff's going to work. And you ride this bike and there's no clutch and it makes no noise. And is it a Harley? Is it not a Harley? And do you like it? Do you hate it? There's all this sentiment out there about it. And I kind of, as a 30-year motorcycle veteran and as a person who has lived motorcycles your whole life, talk to me about the live wire.
Well, here's what I got to say about that. When it first came out, it was hyped up. We were hearing about it. It sounded really cool, and we were excited about getting one. And we finally got one. It took a while to get them. And an old friend customer I was out in the parking lot one day, and he asked me what I thought of it. And I said, man, I don't give a shit about that thing. It's just not for me. And I've caught myself, and I looked over my shoulder and said, oh no, I hope Mark didn't just hear me say that, because that's a pretty negative sales tactic there I just used. And so we got 2 more, and we needed some miles on them. And Bacon has been to school, trained on them and everything, and he offered all the techs to be able to ride one so we could just feel it and enjoy it. And everybody kind of rode it, and it come down to me, and I said, no, I don't care about riding it. I don't want to ride it. My old fashioned ways kicked in, and I didn't want to feel it, didn't want to experience. In the back of my mind, probably didn't want to like it or fall in love with it. But another one came in, and it had 5 miles left on it to ride, and I gave in, and I said, all right, I'll do it. And I rode it, and like you said about the noise and everything, it wasn't there. Nothing for my left hand to do, nothing for my left foot to do. D-cell was braking, so I mean it was real easy to ride, but then you get to that point where you get a little comfortable with it, and you're like, all right, I want to see what this thing will do. And you grab a big handful of throttle and twist it, and it was violently fast, scary fast.
Mm-hmm. Instant torque, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I kind of fell in love with it at that moment, and I would love to have one to commute on. So I changed my mind about it a little bit. It's very cool. I would definitely own one. But I'm not getting rid of the electric light.
I think what's interesting is kind of the same thing we're trying to get people to experience just to get into motorcycling. You went through on the live wire, where you were unsure about it, and when you rode it, it was so exhilarating that it literally changed your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what we are trying to do for the sport as a whole right now.
Yeah.
So let's see if we have any questions out here floating around from anybody. Tell the story of Brad's righteous. Oh, I you know what? I meant to bring that up actually, and thank you for that reminder, because I was there and I was sort of supposed to be in charge, and I didn't know how this was going to end. So tell that story.
So we left. The big funeral procession was awesome.
And this was for Brad's. Oh, this was for Ray's funeral.
Ray's funeral.
Ray's funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
Brad was still alive.
Yep.
So we were leaving the cemetery right down here at Montalon, coming back to the shop. And there was me, Noel, Bacon, Jason, Brad. I think Robin and Rebecca was in a car. Anyway, we pulled out of the cemetery, and the first light caught us. So we all kind of stopped real quick, and we lined up, and we didn't really realize how easy it was to take off drag racing. But, you know, of course, when you're sitting at the red light and the light turns green, you're going to jump on it and take off. So we all kind of, took off hard. And then before you know it, the next light catches us. So this time we're like, oh boy, here's another light. We're really going to race this time. We line up, a couple of us take off really hard. Noel was driving some kind of BMW company bike, and a piece flew off of it. And lo and behold, the third light catches us. And now we're like, okay. And that was entering underneath 40.
Uh-huh.
We're like, this is really going to be a race. And me and Bacon was on his shovel head. We were behind Brad and Jason. Jason's got a big 120 cubic inch motor. Brad's was a really hot 95.
Mm-hmm.
Remembered 11 plus the one compression. Well, them two took off, and Brad, of course, wanted to beat Jason's big motor just because that's the way Brad was. Of course. And it was a lighter bike, but they both took off, and it was like you took paint and drew black marks on the pavement behind them bikes. And they drifted together, and I swear I almost touched, and then drifted back apart, stayed on them. And to this day, I can't tell you who won, but they stayed in them, and we were well above 100 miles an hour. And I can't believe why we didn't get caught or the law didn't get involved, but they didn't. And we got back to the shop, and just the adrenaline was pumping, and we were all just in a tizzy, and we realized that was Ray Price fixed all them lights because he taught us all how to drag race.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had the best, funnest street race ever. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I watched it from the back thinking, oh, please, please no.
I think
Please behave.
Robin made the comment that it scared the crap out of her when we took off one of the launches because it was so loud and everything, and probably thought, "Oh no, they're in trouble now." But we didn't get caught. That was good.
Yeah, that funeral was pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to know how many bikes were in that.
5,500.
Oh, you've had them counted?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, we had 5,500 bikes there. The Red Hat Amphitheater is only used for funeral ceremonies for city council and politicians and people in government, and Ray Price.
Well, he was a big part of this city events and stuff.
Yeah, we had the funeral ceremony at Red Hat Amphitheater downtown Raleigh. So the procession was so big. If you probably remember, when they started going into the parking lot downtown, they had not finished leaving Ray Price.
Yeah.
So the procession literally went end to end.
Wow.
To go downtown for that, and it was a pretty epic tribute. Lots of people came from a long way away. I saw somebody asked earlier, what is your favorite ride? What would be your favorite ride in the mountains?
Everybody likes the dragon, but you got to be careful. There's some other places up there that's just as fun. The speed limit's what you got to watch out for on the dragon is one thing I hear.
There it is, favorite ride in the mountains. Yeah, I prefer mountain riding to be more chill. Of course, I think the older you get, the kind of more relaxing you ride. I feel like, but I prefer more relaxed riding. I remember, and I've been fortunate that I got to ride with a lot of the OGs, and I remember specifically riding in a going to a meeting in the mountains, a Harley meeting, and I was. Shelton was riding behind me. Shelton's Harley-Davidson, and we were getting along pretty good actually. Now I think about it, because I was sort of white knuckling the turns to try to keep it going. And I look in the mirror, and here is Shelton, one-handed, and he was just doing this, like he was just swooping through as consistent as he could be, right? And I don't know how the ash stayed on his cigarette. He had a cigarette in his mouth. He's swooping through and I am like white knuckle trying. I don't want him to creep up on me. I'm trying to show him that this young whippersnapper can ride, and he's just cruising through cigarette ash and all. And that particular ride, we met at Thunder Road Harley-Davidson in Danville, Virginia, which is also some good friends of mine. Shout out to you guys in Danville. And that's where we left. So here we show up to meet everybody, and it's raining, and we're wearing full rain gear because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And here come these old school guys, and they roll up in the rain in their leather jacket and a bandana. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, where's the rain gear? And you know what they told me? When it stops raining, we'll dry.
Yeah.
We'll dry out. That's what they told me. I'll never forget that. And you know what? The rain gear was hot.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to stop and take it off when it quits raining.
But I enjoy riding in the mountains a lot. But I like to do it as a relaxing kind of ride. I try not to white knuckle it up there anymore. we have a lot of bad stories about that, unfortunately, when people kind of push it too far.
Yeah, those off-camera roads will get you.
And Tail of the Dragon is kind of known for what it's known for. But if you really do some research and you really poke around on the maps and stuff, man, there's some awesome riding up there that is not popular, like Tail or commercialized, I should say.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that getting lost in those rides is my favorite. And then, of course, when you're just wanting to relax, the Blue Ridge Parkway is very beautiful.
Yep.
So I really enjoy that too. The one memory about the Ray Price era before the buy sell happened here at Tobacco Road that you remember when you think about Ray is what? What's the one that sticks out the most?
Just the way he ran things and taught us, how to be professional and taking care of the customer. He'd get upset if he saw an oily fingerprint on a seat or an oil spot on the floor. He would want to know why we hadn't wiped that up yet. It was losing him. I lost a friend, a mentor, a boss. Him and Gene both really took good care of me, I'll have to say.
You got that you have that picture? I found a great picture the other day. The one of Bruce and Ray at the building. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't even know what we're talking about, but he's listening to me. It makes me feel proud.
He's listening to you pretty intent. Yeah. Yeah, go back to that one. Because one thing about this picture is, for a lot of people didn't know, but Ray did not have the use of one of his arms after a drag racing accident. And this was before that. Yeah. Well before that. And I made a comment about the cars in the background, so probably had to be early 80s. Well, the building was built already, right? Because that's the new building, or no?
Yeah.
So that had to be right after the new building got finished.
Yeah.
Which you were around when that was happening. And so you were around when what I call the ultimate burnout happened right here where we're sitting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Ray invited quite a few racers. I can't think of all their names, but Jim McClure, Bill Furr was a couple of them. Bill Furr and his son, Armin Furr, wanted to make an X right past this motor, and they did it. We didn't know that that's what they were doing at the time, but Jeff's got a video of that thing somewhere. He can't find it, but I've been after him to get it because we should air that because it's happening. The skeleton of the building, and while it's happening, and I mean to see a Top Fuel bike doing a burnout in a limited strip, there was a wall back here,
right,
and they had to stop.
Well, those burnout marks are in our showroom now.
Yep.
This podcast is set up on top of the raceway, and Ray used to always say the straight one's mine.
Yeah, they're signed down there. There was supposed to be some simulators at the starting end, and then a reel. He actually had a camera pack on his back at Rockingham to do a 200 plus mile an hour pass. So he could have that film unrolling on the wall while you're sitting on the simulator.
Yep.
They were supposed to have hydraulics and the shaking and rumbling and stuff in the floor, but that part didn't come through with the new building. And we had actually sent the blower bike chassis for this motor to a guy in California that was going to use that as a pattern to make the simulator parts of those bikes. And it never happened, and that bike's long gone now. We don't know how to get in touch. The guy's faded away, went out of business or something.
Yeah, he went bankrupt.
So
and that's why that never got built.
That frame's gone.
So cool tidbit about Tobacco Road Harley-Davidson: when you're in the winner's circle and you're on that wood floor, that paneled floor, right there under the right there under this Tobacco Road logo, there are pits under that floor where the simulator bottoms were supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he got so mad when that guy went bankrupt, he just plowed over the pits with wood and built the floor, which is now the winner's circle. We've been delivering bikes out of there for so many years, and people are standing on there and have no idea there's two pits underneath that floor of empty space where the simulators were supposed to go. Yeah. And if you walk on that floor, you can it
sounds hollow.
It sounds hollow under there if you drop something or if you pound your foot or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a neat little tidbit about our shop that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
When he was building it.
But the camera he wore, or the backpack and the camera making a 200-mile-an-hour pass. That was a feat in itself.
It was. He used to talk about it. The
Yeah.
drag that it put on him, right? Because
Yeah.
that camera would catch wind, and it was hard to get a steady picture. He would talk about because it would be moving around.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. That put that picture back up, Mari. So I love these old pictures of Ray Price drag racing because if you really, really look at his shoes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there even were racing shoes back then. I think those are loafers. I think those are boots. like probably from whatever local dress. I don't know, but
could be. Maybe not those, but there's another pair on a picture of another bike that looked like black patent leather, just church shoes almost. But yeah, that was the blower bike. That was a lot longer chassis.
pretty amazing. So that motor, so there's a picture of the current bike there. Yeah, well, or one of the later ones. Yep. It's amazing how much they changed over time. I love upstairs in the museum how we have the old one and then the newest one side by side, and you can really look at that visual difference, and it's a tremendous display over, 25, 30 years, right? 30, a little over 30 years.
We made the comparison. If you take a picture of Ray on the funny bike, he's in that crouched position. If you lay it beside the picture of him on the longer stretched out bikes, the sitting and position was exactly the same. The elbows tucked, legs, it was exactly the same position, even though it was a much longer bike.
So then there's a transition. Jean decides she wants to retire, and the dealership gets sold, and we end up with new owners. I want to talk a little bit about that transition for you as an employee who was here for 30 years for Ray, and you come to work one day. I have to come back there and tell you what's going on. And I always try to come and give you a little heads up on stuff like that because, you know, I feel like we have a good relationship, and I have a lot of respect for you, and I envy your institutional knowledge and some of your experiences. And so I come back there and I say to you, Bruce, Gene's retiring, the dealership's selling. I want to know what's going through your mind because we've never talked about it after it happened.
Yeah. Well, we heard that John was a friend of Ray's, and they had traveled out there with the drag bike when they would go to Vegas and stuff, and stopped by his store there at Arizona.
Kingman,
yeah. And cranked the funny bike and stuff. So, you know, John was a fan of Ray's racing, you know, even before he bought this dealership. But we heard, you know, that everything was going to stay the same. We weren't going to change anybody's health insurance or time off or tenure here. And we were all real pleased with that. And then to keep the museum and let me, you know, kind of be a part of that really put a smile on my face. And it was just cool for John to say it was okay for the drag bikes to stay here because they're such a part of this dealership.
Yeah, I remember distinctly his words were, "Don't take the man out of the building."
Oh, nice.
And I mean that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you curate our museum now, and we have a secret room, right?
Yeah.
We have a little secret room tucked away around the corner where we keep all the extra things that get cycled through the cabinets over time, and some of the there's a picture of our drag bikes there, and there's a picture of Ray overlooking the last one and the first one.
Yeah, sometimes on Saturday I'll walk upstairs just to see who's looking at the museum. And one day it starts with case number 1, kind of in the 60s, up at the front corner. And there was a man and a woman standing there looking at it, probably in their 50s. And the lady was like, "Oh, look, the tire's on fire." And her husband was like, "No, honey, it's not on fire. He's doing a burnout." And I just got a kick out of that, as she thought it was on fire. but I would, try to interact with them a little bit and answer some questions or tell them about what's in those cases and how it's kind of chronological around the catwalk there. And the funny bike still runs, by the way. It's in mothballs now, but it could be.
I was going to say that
could
actually
be fired up.
You are proud of those facts.
Oh yeah.
That those bikes could still drag race. Number one and the last one could still do it. Now we had the other bikes up there. It's funny. So another interesting tidbit, right? Ray didn't get rid of anything.
I don't know.
He kept everything. He grew up in Johnson County, and he earned everything he got, and he did not get rid of anything.
No.
To include a Bluebird bus that we had to talk him out of selling.
Yeah.
And when he passed, we found all the frames of all the other drag bikes. Well, we didn't find them; they were here. So we were able to kind of reassemble all the other bikes into somewhat what they look like when they were run. That's what you see upstairs in the museum.
Yep.
But some of those motors are dummy motors; they don't have any guts in them.
Right.
But the last one and the first one, those are still legit.
Yep.
And that's kind of an interesting tidbit too. That I noticed that Ray would always have some engineering type advancements. And I felt like whenever he had a big advancement, he would change the livery or the stickers and the colors on those bikes when something would change. And you can see kind of the succession of all that stuff that was happening. And, and to give you an example of some of that, I think you have something here that he used to do with those fake shocks.
Oh yeah.
He was clever about that stuff, right? Because he'd come up with these ideas that would freak the competition wouldn't know what to do.
So it's only the back half of a frame where it got tore up, but he made these fake shocks on this hardtail style frame. So looking at it from the stands going down the track, it looked like a stock bike. It's kind of like your old car ads used to be racing
Right.
win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Right.
So he wanted someone to see this as a stock appearing Sportster going down the track. And it was, big cubic inch motor, really ahead of its time. But
He even faked the little eyelets up here where it would bolt it to the frame.
yeah, I mean, it's just a cool piece. Yeah, just to have this still and laying around, knowing some history behind it really makes it cool.
It's pretty neat. Well, you've been talking an hour and a half, and you were worried that we weren't going to have enough stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that was nice.
Little trip down memory lane for you, right?
Yeah, just getting ready for this thing is really let a flood of memories come in, and trying to pick and choose what we wanted to talk about was kind of difficult. But
what are you laughing at over there?
Thanks to Maury for what'd he say?
That's where Bruce learned his hoarding skills. Oh, for Ray. You learned your
I
hoarding
was
skills for
actually-
Ray.
I was actually going to say something about that. I did learn how to do that from Ray. Yes.
Oh, there's Brad's mom. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Enjoy
I
it.
know you were apprehensive about it. I came to you and I said, "Hey, Bruce, I got this crazy idea. We're going to talk on the internet." And you were like, "What?" And I thought, yeah, it's going to be cool. I'm sure there's a lot to tell story-wise on what makes us who we are today, because we're all products of our past experiences for sure. And it's hard sometimes to convey that to our customers. And so hopefully these podcasts will help with that, because we're going to keep doing them. And we're going to go through our staff members over time to kind of talk about their expertise, how they relate in the motorcycle industry, kind of what they like to do, and kind of humanize behind the curtain a little bit, I think, to show everybody that this is a fun gig. Now it's work too. And sometimes it's sad, and sometimes it's crazy, like right now, when you got just madness going on out there. I went to the bank today. There was so many people in the drive-through today. They had a police officer to keep everybody from getting upset. I mean, the times are just weird. But we're going to keep doing these and kind of go through all the staff and have some good stuff. And hopefully you'll come to another one because I feel like we didn't get to everything tonight.
Yeah, I'll probably come up with some more
because there's a lot of stuff going on out there. Okay, thank you to everybody out there in cyberspace. I do want to mention a couple of things. We did open back up about a week ago. We are abiding by the social distancing, the 6-foot rule. We have sanitizer. We have wipes. We have plexiglass up. We have masks available if you want. We have masks for our staff and for the customers. We are checking your temperature when you come in the door for the safety of everyone that is in the store. We do have a minimum number, but we have not exceeded that in the showroom or even come close. So we're okay there. Most importantly, though, we have adopted some cleaning habits here that are new for the safety of our staff and for our customers, so that you can come to Tobacco Road confidently and spend time here and shop and hang out, meet your friends, and start the rides. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that because the staff here has helped tremendously to get all this set up. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yep.
Give a thank you to Geico local office for sponsoring our podcast, the first 3 episodes. He's sponsoring a podcast he hasn't seen, so hopefully that's okay. Mari's got him up on the screen there with the phone number. Thank you very much, Frank, for your help on that. And our next podcast is going to be next Monday at 8:00. We're going to do it from Tobacco Road again. And we are going to have Nick as our guest. Nick is our service manager back there. And he was on the Raven Connections podcast, and everybody liked it a lot. And so he is going to be our next guest next week, and it should be a lot of fun. We want to share some insight with our customer base on Bike Fest. We have some great stories behind the scenes for Bike Fest, and I think people will get a kick out of that because we've been doing it for a long time, and it has evolved over time, and some of the things that have happened there. I hope everybody tunes in. Please like and share the page, subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can grow the audience and expand the podcast a little bit. Thank you for bearing with us today. This is our first one. It wasn't so bad, was it?
No, it was fun.
Yeah, it's all right. So appreciate it. Thanks for the questions, and we will sign off and say good night.
Good night.